Well, good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar. This is Mike McCarty with Safe Hiring Solutions. And just a couple real quick housekeeping items. We've got everybody muted, and that just helps cut down on the background noise. And since we have so many participants, but if you have questions as we go through this, that little questions dialog box, just post the question in there, and when we wrap up here in 15 or 20 minutes, I will jump in there and answer any questions you have, or certainly you can call in here. Probably the best two contacts here would be Bridget or Brent if you have questions after the webinar. Just wanted to mention a couple things as we jump into this. Just want to give you kind of some tips and tricks with the new system. Do want to say, hey, we appreciate your patience. Moving 4,000 clients is a really big task, and moving to a new software system, we greatly appreciate that. That's not fun. But having said that, we have spent such a considerable amount of time and invested heavily in this new system because it really does so many things that are going to benefit all clients. And so that could range from some of the integrations that we are currently completing, and to some of the intuitiveness that we built into this system. So in the current system, or the old system, if you've already migrated, the old system is a very archaic architecture. It's just old software, and so it required us to do a lot of manual review of information as it comes into the system, which can slow the process down. And so we've spent a considerable amount of time building into this new software some intuitive features and filtering so that the software is doing a lot of the work. And probably what you've noticed if you're in the new system is probably the biggest paradigm shift is now as you're placing an order, if you're manually placing orders, the system is going to run the Social Security verification and populate information before you even push it over to Safe Hiring Solution. That gives you an opportunity to make adjustments, to change things, to add things to the system. It also, you'll notice if you've been running some reports, because of how we configure that Social Security trace, that occasionally you're going to see names pop in there that are misspellings and those type of things that'll pop in as an alias name. And the reason that happens is we use a myriad of solutions to verify address history, and some of that information comes from credit headers. And so as you can well imagine, the credit information, if somebody's applied for credit or postal records or anything, and somebody keystrokes their name into that system incorrectly, it still gets indexed. And that's why you see these names pop up. You can remove them when you see a known misspelling. It's going to actually freeze it when it comes into our system, and we'll quickly remove that information. But as you're reviewing some of this, and it looks a little different because you're seeing a lot of things populate. And so what's the benefit to that? Well, the benefit is twofold. One, it removes all of this back and forth communication between, client managers here at Safe Hiring and you as the client trying to track down information. If the Social Security number is incorrect, it's going to be obvious when you run this. It comes back to somebody else. You can make that adjustment, order it again. Now we're not waiting for a day or two to receive information or share information back and forth. So it really speeds the process, and that's why we went with this with this method. Is we really want to be able to get the reports back to you in a much quicker fashion. I think a lot of you are already seeing the benefits to this. I'm seeing some clients' reports return same day with the same quality that you've always had. And as we get everybody moved over to the new system, in the next, probably 2 to 3 weeks, when everybody's kind of completely migrated over, you'll start to see these things churn consistently like that. And so So, that's one of the big, shifts that you probably see as you're placing orders, is just that information. And what's happening also is, I think some are thinking when you see that social trace start to run that you're done. And so it's not completing. So just make sure that the social security trace runs and populates, but you still have to submit the order. Otherwise, it's going to hang in a draft mode, which I'll show you here in just a second. Some of the other big changes with the system: old system framework, very old. If you're familiar with software and technology, API is kind of a key phrase. And so if I want to share information, I've got to be in a framework where I can share, built on an API. And so this system's built on an API, meaning we can now integrate with other software solutions. So if you're a school district that uses Applitrak, we have integrated with Applitrak. We're really waiting on Applitrak right now to kind of complete a couple things on their end, and then we'll have a solution that you can manage all your background screening from the Applitrak application, meaning you can push the order, and when you push that order towards Safe Hiring, it's going to dump that resume data out of Applitrak. It can then come out of your system, take a right-hand turn, and go to your candidate as an email. They'll click on a link, they'll log in, they'll enter their date of birth, social security number, and then pay for the background check if that's a requirement. And so we've got the Applitrak integration going to roll out this fall. We've integrated with Workday, which is probably the largest applicant tracking system in the market available. And so we've just completed our integration with Workday. We'll be working on an integration with Church Community Bible, which is another system to help medium to large ministries manage volunteers, vendors, processes within the church or the ministry. And we also have two products here at Safe Hiring Solutions that we've launched in the last year. One is Rapid Ref Check, which is a totally automated reference checking platform, which actually now we've just created the ability, instead of calling your references, that can go out as email surveys, but we've now created the technology where it actually texts your candidate, and your candidate can input their references, and then it would text their references. So it's a text-based model. So the speed is really fast, very cheap. It's a lot cheaper than doing a phone-based, even if you're paying somebody to do those. And so we also have a visitor management system that's deployed in a large number of clients and schools and organizations. And so the visitor management system, Safe Visitor, would manage temporary visitors, volunteers, and vendors. And so it's just a controlled access and management tool. And so we needed this new system so that we can integrate all of those products together. And so you're going to see a lot more coming out this fall with these integrations and how they work. So, which is a perfect kind of segue into the dashboard here as we log in, because I want to just kind of, make you aware of a few things to keep an eye on with the dashboard. You can see it's a cleaned it up. It's a bit fresher looking dashboard. But what you've got over here on this left-hand column, when you log in, I would recommend keeping an eye on this area right here. So these announcements, just like I just mentioned, when we send out information on webinars, sometimes we'll email the information as well as post it as an announcement here. Changes in the system, those types of information that we want to share are always going to be right here in your announcements. So you can click on these announcements. It will have any announcements that are listed here. If there's more than one, you can click on this. I can read more information. This one's just basically what you're doing today, listing all the upcoming webinars. You can actually click on this, mark it as red. Once you do that, you go back to your home screen, and now you're reset to 0. And so now every time you log in, you're only looking to see if there's any numbers or information there. We'll come back to this Adverse Action Manager because that's another key function that we've added to the system, but it can be monitored here from the home page. But I want to show you how that works before we come back to it. Here on the dashboard, so you've got this grid in the front. And so what this grid does is it basically shows you a snapshot of everything in your system. And so when you see completed reports, if you've actually clicked on the report or reviewed the report, that information will disappear from this grid. So this grid is basically showing you everything in your system that has not been reviewed by somebody in your organization. And so once it's been reviewed, it's not going to be showing up in this grid here, but you can always find it by going to lookup, which I'll show you in just a second. So the things to keep a notice of right here in this grid. So the first line is draft reports. And so what a draft report is exactly what I mentioned a couple minutes ago when I said the social trace runs, but you don't finish and submit the order. That's a draft report. So if you log in and you see any draft reports in here that are, hanging new 2448, along that timeline, then that report needs to be pushed over to Safe Hiring. And so if you're ordering these manually, you just simply click on that, it'll open it up, and you can complete the order. If you are a client that uses the app screen or the paperless process, and your candidates pay for their own background checks, then what's happening sometimes is your candidates start the process and run the social trace and log out and move on before completely submitting the order. And so they need to complete this process. And so if you go in and push the order, if it's attached to a credit card, if you push the order, then it will actually invoice your organization. So if you use a credit card or your candidates use a credit card, then you just simply need to reach out to your candidate, email them and say you need to log back in and complete your order. The original email they received from us during this paperless process, there's a link, there's a username and a password, and they can log right back into the system and they can submit the order and complete it. So keep an eye on your drafts. This will list all your pendings and the status of what's going on with your pendings and where they're at. If you have completed reports and that have not been reviewed by anybody, they're going to be listed right here on this line, and it breaks them down by the completion time. If there's any negative information, so a criminal history, so if there's anything negative in that background screen report, it's going to be listed here. So the report will be moved to the adverse reports. You'll remember in the old system it had a red dot next to the name, so now it just has its own line right here. And then if anything that needs attention, and so we do a lot of communicating now with the new system actually within the system. It's a lot quicker, and I notice a lot of you are using this to ask questions, and it just facilitates sharing information a lot more quickly. But it would put a note right here if we're needing something. A social security number appears to be incorrect, or a date of birth doesn't appear to be correct. Any information that we might be asking for you just to clarify, you would see it right here. And so you can manage all of that from your dashboard. So you've logged in here, maybe it looks like this test company dashboard like this. Wow, I only see one pending report. I know I have more reports than that. Where do I find, I'm looking for a report on Sam Test's name. So you can always find information in your system by going up here and clicking on this lookup tab. And so you got a lot of options here. I would say you always probably want to start over here on the search status. So, if you log in and you know exactly who you're looking for, you can just type in subject's first name and last name and go. You could also filter this by, I want to see what all my completed reports look like. I want to see what any reports with negative information look like. If there's a criminal record, if there's any no records, so you can sort them by different types of status for the report. You can even, select a status, and I can even put in a date range here. And so when I put this date range in, it is going to filter just by completed during this time period, or criminal records during this particular time period. So you've got a lot of search functionality here. I think we've got one in the system. So let's look at search. So here's Sam Test's name. So I can look individually. When I look at Sam, I've got a couple options here. If I want to preview the report, I'm simply going to click on this button right over here. That's going to load the report for me. I can take a look at the report. And with Sam's report, what we want to do is really get to to look at it, it really looks very similar to the old report, and we've noticed that one of the things we see in the report, let me go ahead and open this, is there's a bit of white space here. And so one of the things we're working with the developers is to really pull some of this white space and get rid of it. And I don't think that's a big development thing that is going to take much time to accomplish. We're just trying to tie up a lot of these integrations and get everybody moved. And then, you know, some of these things like this we'll try to clean up, so we'll make the report a bit more succinct. You'll notice on this one, the only thing in the package here on this test case is a Social Security trace. But you'll notice on your reports, one of the things we did add is it's going to have an overview of your report. So every solution that's ordered in your report, there's going to be a quick snapshot here on the first page. And if there's any alerts, that's where you're going to see it. Just like this, there's an alert. So what's the alert here for the social trace? Well, there's a few types of alerts you might see for the Social Security number. So the discrepancy here is it's a valid Social Security number. You see that listed right here. It's been issued, the state it was issued in, when it was issued. The problem is we got Sam test name trying to use it, and this Social Security number is on the death index. So so that's why it flags an alert. So anytime you see an alert, could be for a criminal record, could be for driving history, you know, negative information in the driving history, you're going to get that up here at the top of the report. That's just going to be kind of an alert or notice to you that there may be some negative information in that report. Other thing I wanted to mention real quickly while we're on this particular grid is, so if you had done a search here of completed reports and, you know, for whatever reason you want to export that information, you have the ability now to export, you know, whatever populates on this page to an Excel spreadsheet, you know, if you're using that for whatever. And so that option's now available. The other piece of functionality, and we're going to do some follow-up webinars here in a few weeks, and the reason we're going to wait for a couple weeks is we're building a few more pieces out that will actually go live a week from Friday related to pre-adverse and adverse action process. And so we'll be doing some webinars probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We'll do a series of webinars, just making sure you understand your requirements under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and as well as showing you some of the new functionality that we're adding to the system. But if I want to look at like Sam test name, and so I want to just click this down arrow over here next to the report ID. Now it gives me a snapshot of Sam. And so with Sam, I can see, you know, the information on Sam's report. I can see what was ordered on his report. I can also do a number of different things here. You know, one of the things you're going to see when we go live with some information here in a couple weeks or a week from tomorrow is, you know, if Sam had electronically signed for this background check. So Sam used the AppScreen system, and you want to see the e-signature. There's going to be a document that's going to post here in this documents section where you can see the electronic signature. You know, if Sam's saying, well, I didn't sign for that background check, where did you get that from? Well, here's the e-signature, capture the IP address of your computer, blah, blah, blah. So that document's going to be stored here. Another area that, you know, any notes that were placed on the report, we obviously don't have any here, but any notes that could be placed on the report would populate right here. The other big piece is this compliancy filter. And so in the old system, you could generate the pre-adverse and adverse action letters, and we wanted to take that to another level with the new system. And the reason we want to take that to another level is the class action lawsuits for technical violations of the Fair Credit Reporting Act are at an all-time high. And when I say technical violations, we're talking about you rescind an offer, you deny employment, and you may have an absolutely 100 solid proof reason why you're doing that. You've got somebody applied to be a school teacher and they're a convicted sex offender. Not going to happen, right? So no problem denying employment based on that business necessity. The problem is the federal law, the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act, requires that denial be a two-step process. It's called the adverse action process. So step one is I have to do a pre-adverse action letter. So if Sam, let's say, is a convicted sex offender, is applied to be a school teacher, and now I'm opening up Sam's report, and Sam's not going to, be a school teacher for us. He's a convicted sex offender. I can't just call Sam on the phone and say not going to work. I can't send Sam a single letter saying, Sam, we rescind the offer because of your criminal history. You can't be employed. Federal law says you've got to send this two-step process, and it's got to be formatted, and certain documents have to be included in this. And so the first step is you have to send a pre-adverse action letter, and this is a letter, and it has to be specific and list information like Safe Hiring Solutions, our toll-free number. And the reason for that is when Sam gets this pre-adverse action letter before you take adverse action, Sam has a right to review the report. He has a right to challenge information, and Sam shouldn't call you if he wants to challenge the validity of some information in the report. He should call us. Most challenges or legitimate challenges that we receive each year are not absolute mistakes like things that showed up that shouldn't show up. Typically, the most common kind of dispute that we deal with each year is somebody's convicted of a felony. It's reduced to a misdemeanor. The court did not update the information in their case management system. So when we run the research on it, it comes back as a felony when in fact it's a misdemeanor. And so those type of challenges, we rectify those. We try to do those very quickly, but you have to initiate the process here. So on Sam, you can see the pre-adverse action letter has already been generated. But if this is empty, because Sam's a brand new case, you're going to simply click on add the letter, and the system already knows, hey, there's nothing added here, so the first thing I need to do is add a pre-adverse action letter. And so I add that, and then you have the ability to email or print that letter, and that's personal choice. A week from tomorrow when we go live with some of the enhancements, I believe there's going to be some tracking to show email was sent, delivered, those type of things. I still am a bit more cautious and actually would suggest, because you're not doing this that frequently, that I would send them certified mail, so that you mailed them to the address that, like Sam here has provided to us, and that I have documentation that I sent that. Because what you're going to send in this first one is a pre-adverse action letter. It's going to send him a copy of the report and a summary of his rights under the federal law. So it's created that for you. You just simply print it, mail it, and you have to give Sam a reasonable amount of time to receive this. And so good interpretation be, at least 5 business days that he's received it, had an opportunity to review it. And then after 5 business days, you're going to issue what is called an adverse action letter. So that's the second step. So step 1 is pre-adverse action letter. Second step, final step, is adverse action. And as I flip back to the home page, when I mentioned over here on the left-hand side, these management tools, you've got this adverse action manager. So in this scenario, we've now created the pre-adverse action process for Sam. The first section has been sent out the door. So we keep it over here just as a reminder when you log in that you have one under the pre-adverse or under the adverse action manager. So it's a note to you to make sure you don't forget to do the final step. And so now you've waited 5 or 6 days. You've given Sam ample time to receive the information, review the information. And at this point, now I need to go in and add the adverse action letter. And so, you can simply click on that, and then you say create the post adverse action letter. And so now it's been created. And these are formatted. If for some reason you want them to look or say things, specifically, that are different, we can certainly do that. These are formatted in the same requirements that the Fair Credit Reporting Act really, the staff opinion letters want them to look like this. And so I wouldn't manipulate them tremendously. It's going to tell your candidate, this is coming from, your company. We can place your logos in here if you want to do that. And actually, I think we're going to give you that functionality to be able to add that. And once that happens, we'll put out an announcement so that your logo would be on this as it prints out of here. It's going to show the name of your organization. Again, it's going to show, here's Safe Hiring, did the background report. If you need to, dispute information, that's who you contact. And then, you would choose, the method by which, you would send that information. And then once you complete that process, and so you've done the pre-adverse action, and now the system just noticed that I completed it by doing the adverse action, you'll see that I'm returned to 0 now. And so the system just kind of keeps track of that. And so it's just a nice little tool to help you stay in compliance with some of the federal law requirements. Again, keep an eye on your announcements over the next few weeks as we announce some of these other webinars related to changes in the system, Fair Credit Reporting Act webinars, and compliance information that we're going to add to the system. Some of the other pieces that you could that you might use, you've got under this My Account tab, you've got ways to change some of your company information. You can add or remove or inactivate users. You can preview invoices, and there's several reports in there that you can run on your system as you gain more data into the system. So that's kind of a quick little overview of the new system, some of the tips and tricks, and there'll be lots of things coming this fall with some of the integrations and other functionality that we're adding, and we'll keep you posted on those. Again, a lot of them will be right here in this announcement section. Also, we'll email them as well. So I'm going to pause for a second and see if we have any questions. Okay, a few questions here. Should I do a pre-adverse letter to volunteers, ministry volunteers? Fantastic question. Probably one of the biggest legal debates kind of churning right now in the United States is, do volunteers fall under the Fair Credit Reporting Act? Our position, and when I say our, I'm not talking my opinion, our attorneys' opinion on this, as well as many in the industry, has always been they don't necessarily fall under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, because it's not, the Fair Credit Reporting Act deals with employment, credit, or insurance, something that's impacting a candidate financially. However, there's been a couple cases where it's been ruled that a volunteer does fall under the guidance of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's strange cases because they actually are paid volunteers. So you're talking about really muddying the water. So my suggestion is, yes, why don't you treat them the same way? I mean, it adds another step or two to the process, but I think it's a good, clean process, because you may have a volunteer and there may be some inaccuracies with the court information, and so it gives them a perfect opportunity to rectify that information. So we're erring on the side of caution and suggesting that you do. Matter of fact, you'll notice that in the new system, if you're using the paperless process, the volunteer authorization and the authorization and disclosure for employment look exactly the same. And the reason we did that is because, just for your protection, if in fact the volunteers do fall under the FCRA, we want to make sure that we have you in compliance. You can certainly, if you as an organization or your legal counsel says we're fine with using our own volunteer authorization form, we can upload that on a case-by-case or client-by-client basis, and happy to do that. But as a default, we're kind of treating volunteers like we would employment, just because we think it's a good practice, and it also provides that added protection if some case law continues to come down the pike to say volunteers do fall under the FCRA. I need some additional clarification. If my organization is paying for the background checks, I would need to go to drafts and begin the process. Is that correct? No, if you are actually ordering them manually, you are going to go to build a report. And once you click on build a report, you're going to enter the data fields, and that information will run the social trace, and then it will push over to Safe Hiring. The only time you should see information in this draft report area is if you start a report, run the social trace, but stop and don't push the information or don't hit the final submission button. So anytime you see something under draft, it means it started, but it hasn't been completed or sent to Safe Hiring, so we have not gotten it yet. Under the adverse action, will it generate a letter for you, or can you upload your agency organization's letter? Yes, it will. It will. We actually have defaulted letters in here that are FCRA compliant letters, and I believe we can, starting next Friday when they make some changes here, be able to modify the letter on a client-by-client basis if you want those modified. Otherwise, the defaults that we have in here are created by industry attorneys that are well versed in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. What if the record does not cause us, the employer, to take adverse action toward the applicant? Will the adverse action manager go back to zero at some point? Yeah, so if you've got a client, so if we looked at Sam Test Name, we ran a background check on Sam, and Sam's got a, let's say he's got a DUI, and it was 10 years ago, and it does not impact the hiring decision. So in that case, you would not even initiate adverse action process, because the only time you're going to initiate adverse action is when some kind of adverse information causes you to not hire Sam or allow him to volunteer. So just because they have a criminal record, that adverse action manager is not automatically initiated unless you initiate that because you're going to deny employment. Is there a way to look up previous reports from the old system? Are they saved? Yes, absolutely. So if you actually go to Safe Hiring Solutions, a couple things to look at when you go to Safe Hiring is underneath this resource tab. One, you can go here, click on upcoming webinars, which I have right here. Got another one in 25 minutes on Rapid Ref Check, and so couple with those and Safe Visitor, our new system, so you can register for those. The other thing is if you go to client login, you'll notice now when you go to the client login page, trying to move around some of these GoToMeeting emblems. You've got new login, so that's the new system, and then you've got old system archived reports, so you can log into the old system and review any reports that you have ordered before moving to the new system. When will the dashboard reset after completed reports have been reviewed? For example, my dashboard currently shows 44 reports at 72 hours, and I've reviewed these reports. I'll check on that, because as soon as you click on that number, that 44, it should reset automatically on the next login. That should be reset to 0. So if you want to log out and log back in and send me an email and let me know if that reset, it should have, and if it didn't, then I'll have the developers take a look at that, but it should reset to 0 on the next login. Is there a page where I can view a list of reports without having to click individually? Yes. Just simply go again to the lookup, and when you go to lookup, then you have the option if you're looking for a specific report, or if you want to look at all your most recent completed reports, you can filter it right here and it would show you that list. So in the test system, if I just wanted to look at all of our completed reports, once I click on that, it's going to give me a list of all those reports that have been completed, and you could add a time parameter there as well. If we are using the paperless system and paying for all background checks, we will need to manually submit information to SHS from the draft area if a volunteer does not complete their application. No, what I would do is if you see one in your draft area and you're using the paperless process, if there's a credit card attached, you want to notify your applicant to go back in. They can log back into the system. They have a link and username and password. They can log back in and they can finish it. If they're using the paperless system but you are being invoiced for the background check, then you certainly could push it through. It's just if you have a credit card requirement attached to it, if you push it through, then they would not have paid for it. So it's a matter of if you're paying for it or if they're paying for it. Will the old background checks be moved to the new system? No, there's no way to do that. It's like speaking French and German. These systems are so incredibly different that the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of reports in the old system, it would be very I just don't even know if it would be developmentally if we could even move that information to the new system. But the access to that information will be open continuously. And so you'll be able to log in and out of the system for quite some time. At a certain point down the road, what we'll probably do is further restrict, once access is no longer really needed to that information, to just here in-house. So if you needed a copy of an old report for whatever reason, we would be able to go back in and get that information for you. All right, I believe that is all the questions. Great questions. Thanks for taking some time out of your morning. If you are already in the new system and have questions, don't hesitate to give us a holler. If you're not in the new system yet, the only groups that we're keeping in the old system is if you use E-Verify, because the federal government moves really slowly, surprisingly, and so we're having some problems getting E-Verify totally up and running in the new system as we work with the federal government on E-Verify. So E-Verify, drug testing, and if you use any kind of credit reports, you're still in the old system. The drug testing and credit reports are going to be able to be functional, I think, by tomorrow, so that the only clients that will remain or need to remain in the old system by the first of the week will be E-Verify clients. Otherwise, if you're in the old system and you're not using E-Verify, we should get you moved over to the new system. Username and password should stay the same. Just simply, email us at info@safehiringsolutions.com, or you can call in here and ask for Brent or Bridget, and they can get you moved over to the new system. All right, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. We appreciate your patience as we're moving everybody over to this system. I think you'll see great rewards in this in the coming months, and we look forward to continuing working with you guys. Have a great day.